Thanks so much for joining us on Reaching the Next Generation. Today, I am just absolutely privileged and honored to have Braxton Hunter, a friend, here on the podcast and videocast. Braxton, you're the president of Trinity College of the Bible and Trinity Seminary, and you are also, you probably would be humble, but in my opinion, you are definitely one of the up-and-coming apologists in America. You were at many of the, you can't deny this, you're at many of the apologetic conferences with some of the big name people, and my affinity to you, not just as a friend, but just as a Christian, is the fact that you really are sharp and well-spoken from an apologetic standpoint. What's awesome, and you may not know this if you're listening or watching, but you got to debate Matt Dillahunty. And for anybody who doesn't know who he is, he's got this thing, I think it's called the Atheist Experience.
That's right.
And, it's millions of viewers. And I remember when you told me you were going to debate him, that I was like, man, that's going to be a tough, I wouldn't have wanted to do it. Tell me what it was like, just the meats and bones of just what's it like to debate somebody that is so adamantly against Christianity. But just what did you feel? What was give me the whole Braxton vibe of that debate?
Fear, lack of confidence, all of those kind of things. But the great thing about Dillahunty, for those that don't know, Matt Dillahunty is probably one of the most viewed popularizers right now. He does it primarily through an internet presence, but he, you could debate someone who's a philosophy professor at some school, and his students know who he is. Matt Dillahunty can release a video about him sneezing, and there'll be 15,000 people see it. So, so it mattered to me because he is making an impact. And there are a lot of people who credit him with their walking away from the faith. When I was contacted first to debate Matt, I knew who Matt was. I had seen what he does on his show. He gets very upset, yells at people, hangs up on callers. And I thought, wow, that's really going to be a test.
Okay.
Even if his content isn't that strong, it's going to be tough because of his ability with rhetoric. And he's just a great debater. And so I prepared for 8 months for that debate.
8 months.
Now, this is going to sound arrogant, and I so don't mean it that way. But based on what was brought in the actual debate, I probably could have debated in the next day after I scheduled the debate, but I prepared for 8 months, learned a lot. I probably could have earned a master's degree with what I studied and learned for that. When I actually got there to debate him, we debated at Baylor University. It's a great platform for a debate. There was a good crowd there. He was a very friendly guy, and he didn't react at all like he does on his internet show. But man, it was a great discussion. And what I found in it was myself eager to answer every question that came up from Matt or from the audience. And Matt often not having what I or a lot of people think is a plausible response, or a response at all. It might have just been, well, I think the best answer to this is I don't know what the answer is. But I think we can have good answers and go further than I think Matt thinks we can. At the end of that debate, we shook hands. It was very, very cordial, but I feel like that was a great resource. And fortunately, many people have come to faith, relatively speaking, many people for something like that have come to faith after viewing that debate and then other resources. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome.
So I feel like God used it. Now, I'm not a real, I don't talk this way a lot,
okay.
But I'll say this now because it's true. It's a part of the story of that debate and maybe the most interesting part.
Okay.
And that is that I had prayed a couple of days before I got the invitation to do that debate. As you said, I'm the president of a Bible college and seminary, and I believe in what we're doing. And so I prayed and said, Lord, if it's going to take me doing something really scary to promote what we're doing here that I believe is good for the kingdom, I'll do it no matter how scary it is. 2 days later, I get the call to debate Matt Dillahunty. And in fact, that gave me a bit of confidence that, hey, I think God's in this.
That's awesome. So the reason I bring that up is because the whole purpose of this podcast, videocast, is I have a heart for the local church. I have a heart for the church, and I see the church in America is in decline. And my biggest heart, not only is for the church, but for the next generation, is to reach that next generation. I often say, as a pastor, that God doesn't have any grandchildren; He only has sons and daughters. And even though I don't effectively believe this, But if the church doesn't reach the next generation, we're always one generation away from extinction.
Right.
I believe that the kingdom will continue on, and I believe that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. But I do believe that that is a sobering assessment when you realize God doesn't have grandchildren. And so the purpose of this is to help pastors and leaders deal with some of the issues that would help them reach the next generation. And where I feel, I mean, you said you felt a little fearful, you felt a little scary, and you're more adequately equipped, whether you would be humble enough to you probably are humble to say that you wouldn't, but I think you're more adequately equipped than the average person. What can we do? What can you say to someone who's listening right now who says, man, I'm just having a hard time with all of the things that are going on in the world. I've got people leaving church. I've got people questioning their belief in God. I've got people listening to guys like Matt Dillahunty that are having them. I think the buzzword right now is deconstructing their faith. What can you say to someone who's listening, who's a pastor, who's a leader, or somebody who really wants to promote the gospel? What can they tangibly do to get better at being able to address some of these really difficult questions that come our way?
Yeah, so this is excellent, Chip, because and I love it that we have a pastor like you who's interested in these things.
Okay.
And that's what I want pastors to do. The important thing is there's a lot that Christian resources and Christian outlets are saying about this. And some of it's good and some of it's not. But there are some actual facts on the ground that we know about this that I think are very helpful. First of all, for someone to get a sense of urgency, I think they should read a good book like John S. Dickinson's The Great Evangelical Recession. It will show you what you just said is actually true about people slipping into the nun category, that not, the NONE nuns.
Yes.
They don't affiliate with any religion, people walking away from church. First of all, it's normal for people in their early 20s, let's say, to do a bit of deconstruction, even people that remain Christians, however we want to frame that up doctrinally, right? And one thing that we've discovered, the Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion did a study on people that walk away. And one of the things that they found was that when people walk away, it's often because they are experiencing doubt, but they don't have a support group around them in the church. When people have a support group around them in the church, they're far less likely to walk away if that support group cares about them and has answers that they can give.
Let's stop there for a second. This is great, because somebody who's listening, what you're saying to me is that the data shows that people who are involved in Christianity, that would say they're professing believers, they believe, Jesus is Jesus, that type of thing. You're telling me that when they start to deconstruct their faith, or they start to have massive doubts about their faith, you're telling me that the data says if they have a support group around them that they can talk with and share with, that the chances of them walking away becomes less significant?
Significantly less.
Really?
Much, and it's surprising how much significant.
How can it, I want you to continue, because I want you to answer all this.
Yeah.
How can a local church, pastor, leader, and again, you're just sort of riffing with me here. How can we create the atmospheres and the environments where we are providing that? Because I don't know. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, here at Grace, you always as a pastor are thinking, do we do these things? Do we not do these things? Because you care about your church. I'm wondering, does the average church in America have those great support groups for when somebody starts to deconstruct their faith?
I think if they do, it's because they're doing other things that happen to fill that role. In other words, they have small groups or things like that are already going on, and it just naturally happens that someone doubting begins to talk about that. But I think we can be more intentional about it. One thing that's important to remember when we're talking about the defense of the faith, Christian apologetics, answering these doubts, 90% of our apologetic material is geared towards answering difficult questions and providing evidence. But when you're including evangelism or building up someone who's already a Christian, building up their faith, it's more than just answering the questions. Most people don't make I would say no one makes major worldview decisions just because of one thing, like evidences, or just because of a relationship, or just because of social circumstances. It's usually a myriad of things. And so the way apologetics is usually treated in answering these problems is insufficient. We need the personal side of that. We need the care and the apologetics. I think that one thing that people can do is make it very clear in church that if you're experiencing what we could call intellectual doubt, worldview doubt. Obviously, there's doubts about my salvation, doubts about particular doctrines. But if you're experiencing intellectual worldview doubt about the faith, about the truth of Christianity or God's existence in general, then it would be good for churches to have a clear path for people experiencing that,
that's a great
to
point.
seek help. Now, another thing I want to say on this is my D-Min project, my major writing project for my doctorate of ministry.
For those of you who wouldn't know, they hear D-Min and they almost hear demon.
Demon,
okay, so that's a doctorate of ministry.
Doctorate of ministry degree, right.
Yes, okay, your doctorate of ministry degree.
When I was working on my major project for that, I actually did empirical research on this. I went to a church in Indiana and that I'd never been to before, had no connection with them. It was a good mix of older and younger people. I had them take a pre-test and a post-test in which they would answer questions related to their confidence in using apologetics and how proficient they think they are in using apologetics. What I found, Chip, was that the younger the individual, the churched individual, the younger the churched individual was, the more of an awareness they had of what apologetics was and how some of these things are used, though that doesn't mean that they were any kind of an expert. And the older a person was, at least among men, the older the men were, the more confident they were having these conversations. The younger people were not confident. The older folks were more confident, but they didn't have as much of an awareness of apologetics. With women, Chip, the interesting thing is the same thing holds true for the younger women, but it's not the oldest women that were the most confident. It's women aged 40 to 69 were the most confident in having conversations.
Really? So
here would be my recommendation for a church. See if you like this. I think this is actual facts that we have that I think could be helpful. That say a young man, say we got Tristan here, and Tristan is running into Chris, and Chris, who's in the church, these are both people in the church. Chris is experiencing worldview doubt. He tells Tristan about it. They're both 22 years old. Tristan could start engaging with him, but he's not as confident, but he does know more about apologetics. And so what he should do, and what a pastor could help arrange, is to get an older man in the church, put him together with Tristan, and together they can help Chris with that worldview doubt. Because the older man's going to bring that sagely wisdom and that confidence to move the conversation forward. And that younger man is going to have more of the awareness of what's going on in the cultural conversation.
That's great. So let's back up and let's reframe this and let's make sure that this is clear from a communication standpoint. You're saying based on your research, not just on an idea or just some sort of, hey, I got this great idea. Based on your research, empirical data research, looking in churches, you feel that a church that is open to allowing people to have questions. And you got to understand something now. There's a lot of churches in America that don't want people to ask questions. They just get in line, buddy, and do stuff. They're not growing though, and they're not reaching the next generation. Maybe they need to hear this. What you're saying to me is that based on data that you did in your project, that if a church is willing to say, if you have doubts about your faith, if you're questioning things, if you got a hold of a Dillahunty or you got a hold of a book that is making you wonder about your faith, you're saying that if a church is open to allowing someone to come forth and say, I have a problem, and they have a clear-cut path after the question's been asked of getting people with the right people. So it might be a younger person, might need to be grouped with an older person that's walked in the faith, might not have the same vocabulary or the same wit of a younger person that's watched just videos. They have like some intellectual knowledge, but that experiential walk, that confidence of I know God is God because I've been with him for 30 years. You're saying that in and of itself could be a massive improvement in churches. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know how many churches have on their website, if you're experiencing doubt, here's the path forward to your experiencing doubt. In fact, I would tell you that most Christians would look at doubt is a bad thing and they want to just push it away. I'm not sure that that's true, though. I did a series here at Grace called The Benefit of the Doubt, and I said that doubt's not a bad thing. We all have doubt. It's what we do with our doubt that makes the difference.
That's absolutely
and so that's important to hear. And I hope that the listeners here are hearing that, because I think if the churches would do that, I think you're right. So we talked about what can we do to better prepare ourselves. Okay, you said get a book that you had mentioned, to read. Your research here. What are some other things that a leader, a pastor can do to deal with some of these issues that we're having? Anything? You got any other ideas that you think?
I think so. I think number one, in terms of, and we're primarily here talking about people in the church and answering their questions.
Correct, because you may say that you're a number of other things, but in my mind, apologetics is your niche, and in doing this, I'm trying to get people that have different niches to be able to scratch the itches of all because reaching the next generation is not just an apologetics issue. There's a myriad of other things that we need to be doing right. But the reason I want your wisdom on this is because people are leaving the church, and they're leaving the church because they feel like that somebody else has given them a better answer or deconstructed their faith or whatever else. And I want to create environments where people who are listening to this can create those environments where people don't leave on this particular thing. So what are some other things? Because what you just said was great. It's making me go, man, we just might need to have a tab. Yeah. It says if you're experiencing doubt and have some sort of plan for that, that's great. What are some other things that we could do to help, stave off some of this leaving, this deconstruction, this the done type thing?
So again, going back to the journal data, what that seems to indicate, like from the Scientific Study of Religion, that journal, is we need to make sure that they have people around them who don't just have some answers, but care. Now, how do we create something like that? Well, first of all, the pastor himself needs to know at least some basic apologetic information so that he's prepared and so that he's able to construct a situation like this in his church that's going to be workable and spot some of the problems that might arise. So I would encourage him to perhaps even audit some classes at a school. He could pick up some great books on this subject, or view great internet channels like this one.
Who are some YouTube people? If I'm a pastor and I'm hearing this, or I'm a leader and I'm hearing this right now, and I'm going, okay, you got me. I'm going to tap out here and say this is probably something I need to listen to. Who are 2 or 3 people online right now, YouTube, they can go to and listen and learn? Who are those people?
A person that I think is extremely successful in exactly this area, who they can connect to, is a guy named Mike Winger.
Okay.
And his channel is Bible Thinker. But
is that Wingr?
That's right.
Okay, Mike Winger.
Mike Winger. He's incredible. You're going to love him. Pastors are going to love him. Okay. And it's good for including apologetics into pastoral material. Also, Capturing Christianity with my friend Cameron Bertuzzi is a large channel that has scholars on in various areas, and then breaks it down where people can understand what the scholars are saying. Okay. So if you're a pastor and you're interested in knowing more about how to talk to someone who's dealing with doubts about the Exodus, I think this week Capturing Christianity is going to have a scholar on to talk about the evidence for the Exodus. Okay. So those are some channels.
So Winger, Capturing Christianity.
I'll give you one more.
Obviously, I would tell you, listen to Braxton Hunter. He's worth listening to. Go there too. You probably wouldn't say that, but who else? Yeah.
And then one more I'll give you for a lighthearted way of talking about culture is a guy whose channel is called What Do You Meme? Meme spelled M-E-M-E.
Okay.
And What Do You Meme? He's going to do a little 15-minute video 2 or 3 times a week, breaking down something in the culture. Here's something Miley Cyrus did or said or something like that. And so I think those 3 channels are great for this sort of thing. And I think pastors are going to love it. So that'd be a good way for a pastor to be aware of some of those things. I think pastors need to be aware that if you don't provide what we're talking about for people in your church, then the first place, especially young people, but not just young people, are going to go they're going to go to YouTube. We go to YouTube to find out how to fix a washer and dryer or to figure out whether there's a God,
That's true.
And so, and that is dominated by skepticism and atheism. And you need to be aware of what's out there and what people are running into with that. And so we want to make sure that we are aware of what's going on around us, that even if you're in a rural community, they have access to through the internet. And so those are some things. The last thing for that question, Chip, that I would encourage. I'm a big believer in creating small groups, a specific type of small group that is for apologetics.
Okay.
And having at least one person in that group, regardless of their age or whatever else, that knows enough that they can have that they can
Sure.
run that group, and then invite unbelievers.
We actually do have a small group at Grace that does
Perfect.
that. So we at least got one thing right. So,
Yeah, that's perfect. And invite unbelievers to come be a part of that, and tell them they can ask whatever question. Don't worry about offending us, as long as you're being respectful and not trying to offend. Just come on and ask your questions. And I think that sort of a situation can really get to something that it's difficult to get to just from the pulpit.
This is just invaluable information, and I guarantee the listeners are going to learn. Let's just promise that we're going to have some more of these conversations in the future. You promise me?
I'm grateful.
Okay, because I really want to do that. So thanks so much for being on, and we will do this again, because I think this is just a subject that we need to do so much more with. Hope you enjoyed the podcast with Braxton Hunter, and continue to watch, because we really want to help you reach the next generation.